We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to the Friday edition of Free Association Radio. This is the Friday FARcast, and generally speaking, I have guests with me on today's program. This is why Fridays exist. We stretch out, we reach out, we go beyond the soapbox that I stand on Mondays. But today, unfortunately, my guest had to cancel. I was going to have Richard Mystical Sun on, and we're going to talk about his new record and get into the sun as a symbol, as an object, as a life source, as an enigma, and what's happening with the sun. Lots of really interesting and pretty controversial things are taking place up there. I don't know if you've seen the video yet, but there's a video on the web where there's an object in front of the sun, and it sits right in front of this solar flare and obscures this. It takes the solar flare and basically deflects it. I don't know what it's doing to the solar flare, but it's in the way of the solar flare, and it's a significant object. It's a significantly sized object, and that's going on up there, up near the sun. Something's taking place. It's not the first time a massive object has been photographed near the sun. Something's happening there in a big way. Either something is helping us out, or something is obscuring something from taking place here that could help us out. One of the two. I'm not sure what it is. I'm just a guy that opens puts his shingle out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on this little blog talk network show, Free Association Radio. Anyway, so Richard will be on next Friday. And what we're going to be talking about today, a couple things we're going to be talking about today. I can't do a show without talking about or visiting what's happened this past week in terms of human barbarity. I mean, it's like all of a sudden we've just woken up and we're in a George Romero film. It started with the news, I think it might have been on Sunday or Monday, where there was a guy in Miami who was naked, and he decided that he wanted to snack on somebody's face for lunch. And apparently the cops were called. They showed up, and they interrupted his little repast and told him to step away. And the naked guy turned, looked at the cops, and he snarled at them and went back to satisfying his hunger. And the cops had no They had no choice in the matter at that point in time. They had to take the guy out. And it took, I think, 8 bullets to finally bring him down. 8 bullets. Wrap your head around that. 8 bullets. These are probably service revolvers. So they're 38s. I believe most police departments use 38s. Some use 45s. So even if it's a 45, that's a pretty big slug, 45. And if they did use a 45, 8 45 caliber bullets, it's a lot. It took 8. Had to empty a lot of lead in this guy. And I actually saw the face of the guy that had his face eaten. I saw what that looked like afterwards, and trust me, I didn't want to see it. Thanks to one of my Facebook friends, they posted it, and I got a glimpse I'll never quite forget. Think Hannibal Lecter. And, oh, by the way, I don't know if you've noticed this, but they've decided to turn Silence of the Lambs into a TV series that airs shortly. The timing is interesting, don't you think? Because what we're seeing now is Hannibal Lecter being turned loose into the populace, some of which takes the form of zombie-like activity and zombie-like attitude and zombie-like tactics, like in Miami, or the guy in New York who apparently cut his stomach open and decided to share his intestines, spill his guts to the world. That took place in New York this past week. But then there's kind of the more kind of gruesome and maybe more sophisticated and less overtly zombie-like mentality, if you can call it that, where I believe it was in Canada where a guy sent body parts, detached body parts through the mail, which is very Hannibal Lecter-like. So in the past week, all of a sudden, we've woken up and we're in a horror film. We're all kind of extras in a horror film. And maybe it was always like this, but perhaps not. Perhaps this is much more defined, much more direct. And I sent an email to, actually I was texting on Skype with Michael Edward, who will be on the program in about 2 weeks. And if you've been listening to this show over the last couple of years, it's amazing that the show's been on almost 2 years now. But if you were listening in the early and middle section of the show, I collaborated quite frequently with Michael. I was on his show and he was on my show. We were doing a lot of tag teaming. And Michael's understanding and comprehension of what was taking place with the Gulf is second to none. I mean, he obviously lives near the Gulf, and when the Gulf disaster went down, Michael was all over it from start to finish. And one of the things that Michael spent a lot of time with was trying to figure out what core exit is, where it came from, what it does, who is behind it. Warren Buffett was a huge investor in core exit. And apparently his understanding of core exit has really grown. And he sees core exit as being part of a chain of other events and substances that are all sort of commingling to change us from the inside out. And he talks about core exit, of course, the nano arrays that we're all being bombarded with chemtrails. I mean, one of the big pieces of the chemtrail puzzle is the nano factor. So we're being hit with nanos from chemtrails, core exit, and everything that's in core exit, by the way, which is not good, and radiation. And all three of them are combining to form a very potent and nightmarish cocktail, which is literally redesigning us from the genetic level up. What it does is it impacts our RNA, which then produces new DNA, and essentially converts our DNA into whatever this other thing is, this hybrid species, whatever it is. We're being genetically manipulated. And it's happening, and it's happening right now. And Michael is going to be on the show in a couple of weeks, and we're gonna put our scuba gear on, and we're gonna go down into the azoic zones. We're gonna go beyond the rabbit hole. We're gonna get down into the Marianas Trench of this thing. It's deep, and it's ugly, and I'm not sure what we can do about it because it is it's affecting our biology, and who knows where this thing is going to go. I mean, sometimes the only thing that I think that can solve where we are and what's happening is a magnetic pulse, and just hit reset on the planet. Just wipe it all out. Wipe out all the technology. It's like that scene from The Matrix where they do a magnetic pulse on the Nebuchadnezzar as the probes are the drones, whatever they are coming into the Nebuchadnezzar, and Morpheus hits the magnetic pulse and shuts everything down. Everything goes to zero. Sometimes I think that's the only way that we can get through this, and that we might have a chance to come back into this timeline from an organic perspective. Somebody's on the 786 line. Let's find out who they are, because they were here, and then they left, and now they're back. Maybe they want to talk. Now they're gone. Maybe I scared them. I didn't mean to scare you off. If you just want to listen, come back on, and I won't put you on the air. So I think that sometimes it's the magnetic pulse that could really just save us. It would literally flush out everything inside of us. The only thing that could survive this magnetic pulse would be organic beings and organic life. Wouldn't that be cool? And depending upon how much synthetic life has infested us and is mutating us, I mean, the numbers might be pretty thin, to be honest with you. But hey, if we're dealing with robotoids and we're dealing with inorganic life forms, perhaps aliens, who are pulling the levers and turning the dials and pushing the buttons, and that's a thought. Maybe that's a way to get them out of here too. Jay Weidner talks about this. We had that interview, that epic interview that people still talk about. That interview took place 2 years ago, and people still talk about that interview. And one of the things that Jay referenced in that interview was this solar flare cycle, the CME cycle, coronal mass ejection. And he believes that who he would call the archons, they left. They knew it was coming, and they left. And they went to Mars. And then they came back from Mars. And many of them were red-headed, rust-colored, because the oxide, the high levels of iron oxide on Mars. They changed the species. So when they came back, they were literally a different species when they returned. And they weren't supposed to leave. They were supposed to stay here. They were supposed to suffer the same fate as the rest of humanity so that the planet could have a restart. Right? This would be the solar enema, the solar colonic. And bastards, they didn't play by the rules. They came back, and they came back as gods. That's one theory of how all of this got to where we are today. That's one theory. But I think it's not a bad theory, and quite frankly, I'd like to see that take place. And you know what? If I wasn't here, so be it. If other people got to hang out, repopulate, and do this thing right, so be it. I'd be fine with that. However, if I could make it through that eye of the needle, I'd do it. I'd stick around. Why not? Why not? Could be interesting. Could be really interesting. Speaking of interesting, if you look on the show page, which is probably where some of you are if you're not in the chat room, if you look on the show page, I posted some photos. And I wanted to talk for the majority of the show. I'm not sure how long I'll be on today. I'll certainly be on an hour. And I would be happy to take calls today. I actually encourage people to call in. There is a number. It's 347-308-8995. 347-308-8995. And you can call in. But there will be a time for that. It'll be after I go on my little rant about the pictures that I posted on the show page. And a couple weeks ago, there was a Time magazine photo, which is pretty controversial. There's a woman. She's blonde. She's attractive. She does not look pregnant, okay? This is not a pregnant woman. This is a woman who is fit, who's in shape. She is attractive to the male eye, okay? And on that Time cover, by the way, isn't it interesting that that magazine is called Time? I mean, just think about that for a second. Time. Every time you look at time, what does it do? It reinforces that you are in time. That time as a construct is omnipresent. And there are obviously other manifestations of time, but think about that for a second. And time has been around for a long time. We had life for a while. We had look for a while. But time never leaves us. Time is always around. So here we have this woman. I believe it wasn't Time. I think it was Life. Life. Henry Luce. Luce as in Lucifer, as in the light bringer. Henry Luce Booth was the publisher of Life magazine. He might have had some hand in Time. So anyway, that magazine photo was, the cover photo was pretty controversial. It still is. And here's this woman. She is not in the early stages of breastfeeding. You know the stages I'm talking about. A lot of you who listen to my show are mothers or have been mothers or can relate to being mothers on some level. I mean, after you have a kid, you are, there's more of you. And there's a reason why there's more, because you got to feed that life form. And that photo, that is not a more view photo. That woman's been to the gym. And the size of the kid, look at the size of the kid in that photo. I mean, he's like about a 5-year-old kid. That's about a 5-year-old kid suckling at her breast. Now, what's interesting about that photo is that, and I actually saw the connection on Facebook last night because I posted another photo, which we're also going to talk about. And that photo is the two women who are in fatigues breastfeeding. We're going to get into that photo as well. But we're going to start with the Time photo. And the connection between that Time photo and what I wanted to talk about as the manipulation of feminine archetypes is that Time photo is a rendition of Isis. It is a symbolic rendition or replication of Isis. And I put Isis on the show page to illustrate the closeness of the connection between that photo and the statuary of Isis. There's another bas-relief / hieroglyph of Isis where it's an almost one-to-one replication in terms of aspect ratio, size, everything. And Isis is a fertility goddess. And here in that, you see that there's a connection between the two. And we were initiated into this Isis fertility cycle at the Super Bowl. And it took place with who? Madonna, the mother, right? The mother. And who was she? Who was Madonna at the beginning of that Super Bowl? She was Isis. She was the manifestation of Isis. She had the horns of Isis. Everything about her was Isis, Isis, Isis. And it became a rite. It was a rite, a magical rite to Isis. And the son of Isis is Horus. Horus, right? If you play with Horus just a little bit, what do you get? You get the word hours. Hours. And what is hours? Hours are units of time. So having Horus or hours on the cover of Time with faux Isis makes a great deal of sense. So we were inducted into an Isis ritual and an Isis cycle with Madonna during the Super Bowl. And the key song, and I talked about this with Sister Myra during the show that we did together, was Give Me All Your Love, right, with Nicki Minaj, the demonically possessed, multiple personality, sexually abused, traumatized Nicki Minaj, from childhood, by the way, and MIA, the radical, the Indonesian radical rapper who was married to the son of the Bronfman family. So, the Tamil tiger, the Tamil tigress married a scion of one of the most powerful, elite families on the planet. Put that in your pipe and smoke that. Anyway, so we look at that cover. Let's look at that cover for a second. It's a replication of Isis. And we're being now inundated with Isis-like imagery, which is manufactured to put us in a trance, to supplicate us. Because when we see these images of maternity like that, especially like I'm a guy, right? I'm a male. And I look at that woman, that's an attractive woman. And so I am relating to that photo, from a place of being attracted to it. But then there's that primal Edward Bernaysian, triggering, the Freudian triggering, and the archetypal triggering that's taking place, which says, oh, breastfeeding. Give me a breast. Let me suckle on that. Good. Mother's milk. So it placates us. It placates us and puts us into a trance. That's what it does. I'm not the only one out there, by the way. There's other people that have picked up on this. I may do a few other different things with it, but that's what's happening. And that Time magazine photo is designed to do that. Now, if you look at that Time magazine photo, there's some other interesting things that have not been pointed out and which have resonance with the photo of the two women who are in the army and who are suckling their young. Okay? So, if you look at the boy in that photo, what is he wearing? He's wearing army fatigues, isn't he? Who is he? He is a young soldier. He's a young soldier. He's a soldier in training. That's what he is. Who is he a soldier in training for? The army of ISIS, perhaps? I don't know. But there are those fatigues. Look at them. None of these things are done by accident, okay? They could have put blue jeans on that kid. They could have put baseball pants on him. They could have put him in a diaper. But instead, they put fatigues on him. So fatigues, right, are the symbol for fatigues is twofold. Number one, we know that they're fatigues, they're camouflage, but think of the word itself, fatigue. Fatigue. And you recognize that in your brain, fatigue. What does it do? Fatigue, tired. What do I want to do? I want to suckle the breast. Give me the breast. Because we're all pretty fucking fatigued. Okay, we're tired. What are we tired of? We're tired of a lot of things. A lot of us are tired from working our ass off and not making enough money. That's number one. Then we're fatigued with all the psychic bullshit that we have to put up with with people in our lives who are also fatigued. Then we're fatigued from having to fend off all of these symbols and these images and the noise. We're fatigued with that. You know, we're in a jungle right now. We're trying to get through a jungle. We got a machete and we're just trying to get through this jungle. And we are tired. And so when we see a symbol of a boy who, by the way, is a boy and not an infant, and he's wearing fatigues, well, you do the math. It puts us in a state. It puts us in a particular state where we lay our guard down, we surrender. We are in a place where theoretically are mollified and are trusting, because who can you trust? You can trust your mother, theoretically, right? So the fatigues are very, very specific and very symbolic and very important to that photo. Now, the other thing, which, again, not many people have picked up on with that photo, is that if you look at the type at the top on the left and the top on the right, they're leaders for or headers for two stories that are inside time. The one on the left says the French rejection, and I believe that has to do with Sarkozy, right? Sarkozy, who, by the way, his brother is now dating one of the Olsen twins. So, wrap your head around that. His 42-year-old brother, I think, is dating Mary Kate Olsen. And the Olsen twins they're MK Ultra manipulated kittens. So that's his brother's, I guess, reward for being a good Sarkozy. But if you look at that, it says the French rejection. And rejection is the last word. And then you go to the right, it says God of cricket. Not the God of cricket, God of cricket. And I'm assuming that has to do with the story about the famous English cricket player whose name escapes me right now. But you look at the two words, the end of the French rejection, it's rejection, and then the next word across from that, because we read left to right. The next word is God. So we have rejection, God. And that's part of the masthead, part of the entire encapsulation of word and image on time. So now we have rejection, God, time, ISIS, fatigued, young soldier in training, all in one cover. That cover is a cover of masterful manipulation. Masterful. Now let's fast forward. Let's talk about the latest images which have hit the internet. And they are of the two women, which I've also posted on Facebook and on the show page. The two women they're in fatigues now. Okay, we've gone from the boy in fatigues to the women in fatigues. So if you're paying attention, if you're keeping score at home, right, we've now morphed that image from a kind of a nascent image, and it's grown. And it's gone from a boy to women, which is kind of weird in and of itself. So you have these two women, and one woman is on the left, and she's cradling her child, and the other woman on the right, she's got her boobies exposed, and she's got two bald heads, holding them up like they're I don't know, bowling balls or something. Groceries. And these two bald heads are pressed against these boobies. And again, I'm a male. And I look at that image, and she's an attractive blonde woman. She's got full round breasts. And so, obviously, I'm looking at it going, wow, that's, kind of hot, or, it's triggering some chemical reaction in my brain. She's like this Madonna, right? And now you bring these kids into the picture, into the image, and they're twins, by the way. They're twins. And where are we? We're in Venus retrograde, right? And we are headed towards the Venus transit happening this weekend. It's actually it's next week. So it starts on, I believe, on Wednesday. So that in and of itself is really interesting imagery. The twins. And, do these things happen by accident? Are they just kind of, this kind of cyclonic, whipping up of imagery from the collective unconscious? Oh, look at that. Perfect. Hey, twins. Venus retrograde. Or is it really much more specific? And is there intent behind this? I would say yes. I would say absolutely 100% yes. Yes, 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 yes. Because there are people that use these symbols, that use these cycles, and they do it over and over and over again. And they do it because there is immense power behind it. And so what we try to do, theoretically, is to untangle these things so that we're not being manipulated by them to the extent that we already are. But here we go. There are the two women, and they are suckling, again, fatigues, army, right? And it's like, let your guard down, relax. It's a soporific. It is a symbolic soporific. And what's interesting is, now check this out. This is going to blow your mind, okay? The names of those two women in the army photo are, the name of the woman, I can't make this shit up, okay? The name of the woman on the right, the blonde with the two boobies, her first name is Taryn. T-E-R-R-A-N, Taryn. 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 Earth. Right? That's Mother Earth. That is the symbol, Mother Earth. That's who she is. The woman on the left, what's her name? Her first name is Christina. What's her last name? Luna. So we have Taryn and Luna all in the same picture. I mean, talk about covering your feminine bases in one picture. I mean, that's amazing. And not only is it Luna, but it's Christina Luna or Christian Luna. So, it's like the light Madonna and the dark Madonna, right? In duality. And the twins. This is amazing shit. And it's all just coming at us. And so another picture that I posted, which is on the show page, is a breast pump by Avena. And the name of the breast pump is called Isis. It's the Isis breast pump. So I posted that because I wanted to show that there are, that these symbols are used abundantly in manufacturing and product placement. And not just that, but the manipulation of our consciousness. One of my Facebook friends, pretty interesting woman, she posted this image of the Starbucks maiden and another image of Astarte right next to the Starbucks maiden. And they're the same image. They're the same image. And so what Starbucks is doing, again, is tapping into the collective consciousness of the coffee sipper, theoretically, and bringing them back to this piece of the goddess, right? So she put that on her page, and this one guy, he says, "Oh, great! I can't wait. I don't see anything wrong with that at all. It's the return of the divine feminine." Okay, fine, great. He's excited. So one of the things that I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to ask people questions on Facebook. Like, what do you mean by that? People will put stuff out there. It's like, what do you mean by that? What does that mean? So I asked him, what does the divine feminine mean to you? How does it manifest? And his response was, it's all about raw love for self, other people, and the planet. I'm like, what? Raw love for the self, other people, and the planet. Clearly, the return of the divine feminine is not an intellectual movement, because that was one of the most fucking idiotic things I've ever heard. Sorry. I mean, couldn't you come up with something better than that? And I didn't say that on Facebook, although I was tempted to. I did say, well, that sounds generically pleasant enough to me. And he liked that. He didn't really understand that I was kind of digging at it just a little bit. Look, I don't think we have to be utterly dismissive of our feelings and love, okay? We don't. We just don't. But on the other hand, when we see images, or I see images like what I saw on that Time magazine cover, and with these two goddesses, Terran and Luna, suckling twins, and, you know, the other baby, Luna's baby, what I do see is this circumnavigation and this short-circuiting of our intellectual capacity, our reason, and our ability to question who, what, where, why, how. And it's all about just trusting and just letting go and just surrendering. And yeah, we need to do that at times, because there are times where we've got no answer or no clue. But just to simply, surrender and abdicate our reason or intellectual capacity in the face of some kind of, spiritual sloganeering is just ridiculous. And do I want the divine feminine to return? Yeah, absolutely. But I want it to return in balance along with the divine masculine. It's like, come on now. It's because, even if you think about it in kind of the larger, the larger picture, it's all Hegelian, right? Well, man is bad, males are bad, so let's bring on the divine feminine. That's the answer, right? That is the Hegelian dialectic in action. When really the answer would be the divine feminine and the divine masculine being together. And what does that mean anyway, to be a divine masculine or divine male and a divine female? What does that mean anyway? Well, first of all, it means that we treat each other really well. Number one, we respect each other. And we recognize God in each other. Goddess, if you want to throw the goddess piece in there too. We recognize that. We recognize that we're sacred, right? We care about each other. And we care about each other differently, in different ways. We're not the same. We're not gender neutral. We're just not. As much as, the Luciferian / satanic powers that be want to continue to make us appear that way, we're not. We're just not. Because that's where the mystery is, people. The mystery is that I'm different. My sex is different. My thoughts are different. Everything about me is different in terms of my male perspective. And if you're a female, right, then your perspective is different. And the answer is to not make everything fucking gender neutral. The answer, if there is even an answer, and there may not even be an answer, it's just the deepening of the question that we're different. And it's in that differentness that we get to explore, and we get to learn and grow and understand this mystery of who we are in this, theoretical dual reality. It's not some gender neutral whitewashing. And what I get from all of this is that it just becomes that. It's this dumbing down of being able to understand a much more complex question in ways that sometimes even language can't even support. And that's where we are. That's where we are with all of this. And it's kind of a critical time, right? We're coming into Venus retrograde. The other thing with Venus retrograde and the Venus transit is that we're going to be dealing with more images of like Venus more images of Gemini in the press. For instance, the last week, Venus Williams was all over the news. Venus, 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 who happens to be a Gemini, by the way. And unfortunately, I guess for the powers that be, she lost in the French Open. So they had to stop writing about her, which is a bummer, I guess, for them, not for me. And then we got Mary Kate Olsen info. Of course, she's a twin. She's a Gemini. She's in the news, dating Sarkozy. So we're going to see more and more of this as we move through this Venus retrograde and we move through the Venus transit. More images of Venus, more images of Gemini. They're all going to be hitting us. And the thing, too, with, again, if you look at Venus retrograde, right, and you look at these pictures, and you look at the imagery of the pictures, what does it do? It makes us revert. It makes us return. It gives us a retrograde motion inside of our own psyche to return to that state where we were suckling on mommy's breast. So that in and of itself is symbolic of a retrograde motion inside of our own emotional body. Very fascinating stuff. I mean, these things are they're not random. They're very well thought out. They're strategically placed at strategic times, and we have to, swim through it and get through it and understand really kind of what the hell is going on. The other thing, getting back to this guy at Facebook, I posted I posted the image of the two Army women, Taryn and Luna, together, okay? And some guy, I don't even know how he's my friend. He takes that image and he says, "Wow, powerful image of the goddess." And he reposted it on his page. And if you looked at my text, it was kind of tongue-in-cheek. It was kind of like, really, it's like, "Oh, hi, we're Army moms. Well, we're not out killing the infidels and slaughtering the forces who oppose democracy and freedom. Well, we take time out to suckle our babes, thus completing the circle of life." It was kind of tongue-in-cheeky. And he just like, "Wow, goddess." I'm like, "Well, what goddess are you talking about, man?" Look, I don't have a problem with the quote-unquote goddess. I don't. But I just think that people don't have a, deeply philosophical or intellectual understanding of what the hell they're talking about. I mean, they babble like children with some of this bullshit. Speaking of babbling like children and goddesses, I got a story to share. Okay. So this happens on my son's baseball team. And as a dad who has an investment in his kid doing well, no matter what it is, whether it's, been, jiu-jitsu or baseball or reading, whatever, I want to see my kid do well. Because I think it's good for him to do well. I think it's good for him to feel like he can accomplish something, to win, to get a medal. It's a fail. Failing and losing is not a bad thing. It happens. It means you care. If you fail and lose and you're upset, it means you care. It means you're alive. And that's okay. It's part of the deal on this planet, folks. It's what you signed up for. So, I take time out to work with him. Get him ground balls. Make sure he can catch a fly ball, so when a fly ball is hit to him, it doesn't embarrass him. Look, would it embarrass me? Yeah, slightly. I'll be honest. But it would embarrass him more. And kids are freaking merciless, all right? I went through it as a kid. I don't want him to go through the bulk of what I went through. He's going to go through it anyway, but you can limit how much a child goes through, right? Just the way it is. So I work with him, and guess what? He's gotten better. And now he's like one of the better players on the team because he can play a little bit and because I took the time out to work with him. Now, there are two kids on our team who are, guess what? They are sperm bank babies, and they have two moms. One kid has two moms, another kid has two moms, so we have two two-mom kids. I got to tell you, they're different. The kids are different, really different. And one of the kids I like. The other kid, psychopath in training. And I'll tell you how I know this. So let's start with the psychopath in training kid. He has the most unnatural relationship with his quote-unquote mothers that I've ever seen. He's 9 years old, and he's on the baseball field, and he's, yelling to his mom, "Mommy, Mommy, I love you. I love you, Mommy." I mean, it's like the language of a 3-year-old, and he's a 9-year-old kid. Do you realize that in some cultures, a 9-year-old kid is out hunting and killing small animals or fish? Mommy, I love you. And the other thing that is completely unnatural is he goes to the bathroom like 2 or 3 times a game. He'll say to the coaches, "Coach, can I go to the bathroom, please?" And the coaches will just roll their eyes. Why didn't you go before? And so I'm watching this kid, right? And I actually know him through my son because he goes to my son's school. And he's the bathroom monitor, by the way, at school. The bathroom monitor. And he's also the library monitor. So he's setting himself up to be in these little positions of power, right? Okay? Now, here's the deal. He can't catch. He's been on the team for a year, and he still can't catch. So the other day, I'm at practice, and I said, "Look, just stand 3 feet away from me, and I'm going to just underhand you the ball. Underhand, underhand, underhand." And he started to catch a little bit, and one of his moms said, "Oh, that's a good exercise. Gee, I hadn't thought of that." Well, maybe if you cared enough about your kid, you would have thought about it and worked with him instead of watching him go out and humiliate himself every single game. I mean, to me, that's neglect. I'm sorry. That's neglect. You throw your kid out there and you say, fine, do it. So anyway, I'm trying to work with the kid. I'm trying to get rid of my predisposition. Like, hey, maybe I can help this kid. Maybe I can save this kid. Maybe I can impart a little bit of, positive male patterning in this kid's life. And so, we played a little catch, and now we're in practice, and he's playing left field. And one of the things we're supposed to do is we're supposed to back up each other. It's a team sport, right? So if the ball is hit to the left fielder, the center fielder will run and back him up. And so what happens? In practice, the ball is hit to the kid, whose name, by the way, is Lucas. You do the math on that. And so the ball goes to him, and of course, since he can't play, it runs right by him. Now, this other boy runs and goes after it. He's playing center field, and he gets there to the ball as Lucas is chasing after the ball. And what does Lucas do as the boy in center field goes to pick the ball up? Lucas steps on his hand. He stepped on his hand with cleats. And it was not a gentle step. I watched it. It was kind of a hard step. And the boy who went down to pick up the ball, well, he was hurt. He was crying. And I watched Lucas. I watched him. I watched that moment go down. I watched that evil little fucking smile on his face. Like, I'll show you, little boy. I'll put you in your place. And I blew my cork, man. I just said, you get over here and you apologize to him. I was pissed. And what did What did mommy do? Nothing. Nothing. Anyway, that was one of them. And then the other one, not a bad kid. I was working with him last week, and I noticed he kept missing the ball. And I asked him, I said, how long have you been playing baseball for? He said, 2 years. And you can't catch a baseball. And I watched him, and I said, you know why you can't catch a baseball? You're not focusing. Catching a baseball is going to be the most important thing in the world in that moment to you right then and then. Right then and there. You've got to catch the ball. You've got to catch the ball. Concentrate. And once I worked with him on it, and he got it, that it was really important for him to catch that ball, he started to catch the ball. Now, we have a playoff game. It's a tournament game. It starts on Sunday. And, you know, it's our first tournament game. And what are his two moms doing? Well, they're taking him to a Giants game. Oh, we're going to miss that game because we have tickets to the Cubs. You know, again, I don't know. I don't understand this. I just don't understand. First of all, when I was a kid, maybe I'm just projecting, all right? But when I was a kid, I had to be dying to get me off a baseball field. Dying. And I would not miss a game for my life because it was really important to me. I loved it, right? And, you know, I think my kid really enjoys it. And it's a playoff game. It's a really important thing. It's like it's the first time they're entering into competition. Oh, no big deal. We're going to miss the game. We're going to go to the Giants game. So, in essence, what they're saying is they're sending their son a message that it's better to be a spectator in life than to be a participant. At least that's what I'm picking up here. I don't care if it's the Cubs. The Cubs stink. Who cares? It'll be another baseball game. How many baseball games is your son going to play, theoretically, and at a time where his team is actually doing well? I mean, so these are the things that I'm watching, you know, with these kids that are being raised by two moms, you know, from synthetically kind of generated experiences. And I think it's different in some ways, by the way, than single moms raising kids by themselves, especially ones that are not ones that aren't synthetic or different. I've got a good friend of mine, really good, you know, somebody I used to live with, you know, who had a sperm donor baby, and she's a single mom, and, you know, she really wanted to have a kid. I love her, and, you know, she's a, you know, dear friend. But I think it's different because there are male figures in that girl's life, and it's just a different vibe. It's a different, you know, it's a different temperament. I got one of my son's best friends, another example of a woman who wanted to have a baby but didn't want to have a relationship. You know, she was a working mom, a lawyer. And he's not a bad kid. Why is he not a bad kid? He's got a male figure in his life that spends a lot of time with him. So I don't know. We're living in a really complex world. And when we see these images on Time magazine and Luna and Taryn, you know, and we see the synthetic biology swirling around us, taking us out of our organic structures, out of our organic life, it just gets hard. It gets really challenging. We get fatigued by it all, theoretically. And then we wind up turning into zombies and eating people's faces as a result. No, that's not really the case. But it seems that way, doesn't it? Speaking of zombies, if you want to kill a zombie, apparently, according to Sherry Schreiner, all you have to do is get a bucket of water and then place some orgone generators in the bucket of water for a couple days. And then you can take that water and put it in super soakers and hit zombies with orgone water, and it will disable them. So for future zombie attacks, get yourself a machete, very sharp machete, because another way to stop a zombie is to cut off its head. And then you've got the super soaker with the orgone. Speaking of cutting off of heads, I was watching this interview with Evelyn de Rothschild. It was one of these YouTube We Are Change videos. And sometimes I just wonder if those We Are Change videos are trumped up in some ways. Like, how do they find Evelyn de Rothschild? And how is Evelyn de Rothschild not around security? I mean, think about that just for a second. These guys are just hanging out, waiting to see Evelyn de Rothschild with their video camera so he can ask him a few questions, a few non-threatening questions. Think about that. I've seen the same thing with Rockefeller. Why is this? I don't, it's like, I mean, I think it's kind of odd, really. And how do these people afford to be able to go follow around the Rothschilds or Rockefellers? The one time I saw, the one YouTube interview, We Are Change video I saw was with Tim Russert, and that was hard to watch. They were really hard on Tim Russert. It was one of the guys that they probably should not have been hard on, because Tim Russert actually asked questions that probably initiated and instigated his death. He asked both George Bush and John Kerry about being members of Skull and Bones and their Skull and Bones numbers and names and all that stuff when they were running for president against each other. And Tim Russert died very young from a heart attack. But I was just watching the We Are Change video with Evelyn de Rothschild, and I thought to myself, well, what would happen if, somebody took a machete and just chopped Evelyn de Rothschild's head off? What would come out of that body? Would you see snakes just come out of that body? Would it short circuit with wires and diodes and chips? And I mean, what would you see? It'd be fascinating. I'm not advocating beheading Evelyn de Rothschild. Trust me, I'm not doing that. But I just thought it'd be interesting to see that. All right, 347-308-8995. 347-308-8995. If you've got Skype, you can Skype in and talk. I would love to get your feedback on what I'm talking about. Am I full of shit? Am I a male chauvinist pig? Or am I kind of dialing into something that is interesting and noteworthy and something that we have to untangle and look at? Look, I've got 3 planets in Libra. I'm all about equality. And I want us to walk hand in hand together as divine masculine and divine feminine beings into whatever world we're going to inhabit, hopefully, in a timeline that is an organic timeline. I'm all for it. I've got Mars in Cancer. I'm a sensitive guy. But I also see what's happening in the dumbing down of what I'd call spirituality as a result of the manipulation of images and archetypes. And now it's all about mama. It's all about mama. Oh, ba, ma. Oh, ba, ma. Ma. 347-308-8995. 347-308-8995. Have a pulse. Call in. Call into my show. If you support this show, if you like what I do, call in. Call in. Talk to me. Let's kick this around. I'd love your take on this. If you have other examples, I'd love the other examples as well, because I think it's important. It's important to be able to bring this stuff out into the light and talk about it. Speaking of bringing things out into the light, talking about it, I've talked about him before, my good buddy Lawrence on Facebook. He's like, Lawrence is Jewish, and Lawrence is like calling out, what's happening in Israel tying the United States to supporting Israel via legislation with any war that Israel's in. That's new. He's calling that out, and Lawrence is he's bold, man. Lawrence has cojones. He's like looking at his faith, he's looking at his culture, he's looking at what's happening, and he's calling it into question. And hats off to him. We all have to do that. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or Christian or Muslim. We all have to take responsibility for who we are, where we've come from, and what traditions we may or may not uphold. and to scrutinize them, and to see how much they're actually enslaving us versus empowering us, or enslaving other people versus empowering other people. That's another thing that we, that if we want to entangle the knots, we have to do that. And we have to be really willing to scrutinize, what our values are, what our traditions are, where we come from. There are no sacred cows. If we want to be able to get through and transform this time, there are no sacred cows. We cannot live with delusions and expect to grow through them. That's very challenging. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some music, and I'm going to stay on for a while longer, and hopefully if you are into it, you will call in and share your perspectives with some of the things I've been saying. And if not, then I'll just come back after the music, wrap the show up, and talk about, I won't be on Monday, but I will be on Wednesday, and we're going to do a pretty intense astrological show on Wednesday. So you may want to stick around for the Wednesday show for sure. At least tune in for that. Let's see, what do I have here? Let's just do sound vibrations. What the hell? Let's do testing 1, 2, 3. This is Michael V. Hill, testing 1, 2, 3, and I'll be back in 3 minutes and 6 seconds. You're listening to the Friday FARcast. I'm Robert Phoenix. So that was Michael Lee Hill and testing 1 2 3. This is reality. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Anybody home? Anybody out there? How's it feel? I was just in the chat room. We're talking about Prometheus, which is the new Ridley Scott film that is being released today, the 1st of June. And we're deeply into Gemini now. And it's an interesting film. It is the prequel for Alien. And from what I can gather around Prometheus is that it involves synthetic biology, because if you look at some of the footage from the trailer, what you see is some activity between some of the characters, and the activity starts off with very small life forms, and the life forms wind up infesting the members of the crew Prometheus and begin to alter them from the inside out. There are also apparently scenes, from what I've seen in the trailer, where there's the what they call the space jockey, right? Which is the one image where in the first film, Alien, where they go onto that planet and they go into that enormous ship, they find the space jockey, a giant being who looks like he's had the insides of himself exploded, just like how that happens with the John Hurt character in the subsequent scenes of the film. And so I guess they're actually going to that planet for the first time. And apparently, as Alien, which was the film that would theoretically come after Prometheus, that would have been the journey back to that planet, with the idea that they would bring the information or the biotechnology back from that world to Earth, and that was the idea behind Alien. What's interesting is that in Alien, when we talk about feminine archetypes, that the hero of Alien is Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, and as a character, she is a real break in terms of, prior to that movie, really, in a lot of ways, that would have been a male who was doing that role, right? It would have been Steve McQueen or Clint Eastwood or Charles Bronson, somebody that we would have identified with as being able to take care of business. And in that movie, Ripley, Sigourney Weaver, is the one who actually winds up defeating the alien. And Tom Skerritt, who is the commander of the ship, he gets taken out very early on. And there's a lot of really interesting, again, feminine archetypal imagery in Alien. For instance, Tom Skerritt, when they all wake up from their suspended animation in deep space flight, he goes to the computer, the on-ship computer, and it's called Mother. And the room that he's in looks like a womb. Everything else about the ship, it resembles a body. I mean, the structure, the inside structure of the ship looks like, carbon fiber bones and ribs and stuff like that. That's all Giger, and it's cold. It's very cold. But the inside of the room, where Skerritt interfaces with the command control, the mainframe computer, Mother, is spongy and warm, right? So there's a lot of Freudian stuff going on with Alien in a big way. What do? They find these eggs on the planet, and they touch the egg cracks open, and out of that egg comes the face sucker, and the face sucker goes to John Hurt and, essentially bores through his helmet and winds up exploding out of his chest. And so what we have here is, on a psychological level, the male is giving birth here and is giving birth to a monster. And it's really kind of a big mind fuck when you think about it, right? Mother is a computer. She's synthetic. She's, vastly more intelligent. We deal with that kind of Freudian, Bernaysian imagery of the egg. The egg explodes. It is not a mammalian egg. It for the most part, looks like a reptilian egg. And it's a male that gives birth and giving birth to a monster. So everything is flipped. Everything is topsy-turvy, with Alien. And in the end of the film, it is a woman, Ripley, who winds up, vanquishing the bad seed that came out of the male. Okay, if you just follow the narrative, it's there. And then, of course, if you continue to follow the narrative, I believe she actually winds up giving birth to an alien herself. That's in the third film. But in Prometheus, what we have now is we have Charlize Theron, who I believe is now taking on the role of Ripley, a.k.a. Sigourney Weaver. And it looks like she is going to be the heroine of this film. And we were talking a little bit about Charlize Theron in the chat room. And if you look at her, she's got a very sketchy past. A lot of actors, by the way, have pretty sketchy pasts. Like, for instance, if you look at the life of Keanu Reeves, his father is in prison. And Keanu Reeves was born, I believe, in Beirut. And there's like this weird, shadowy past with his dad, and his dad maybe being an operative and a drug runner, and that's Keanu Reeves, right? Think about that for a second. Kind of a fucked up, shadowy past. And Keanu Reeves stars in The Devil's Advocate with Charlize Theron. And Charlize Theron comes from another kind of fucked up past. Her father, theoretically, was abusive towards her and her mom. And the father died. Now, there are people that say that Charlize Theron was the one that killed the dad. And then there are people that say that it's the mom that killed the dad. One of them killed the dad. Okay, so we have the murdering of the male figure in their household, right? So Charlize Theron comes out of that, obviously traumatized, whether she was the one that pulled the trigger or her mom pulled the trigger. There's trauma. You lose your dad, there is trauma there. Sorry. And one of the first films that we see her in was, what was that film? It was, she played an ice skater, 3 Days in the Valley. I think that was one of the first films she was in. And then we see her in The Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino as the devil, and Keanu Reeves as the devil's son, and Charlize Theron as his wife. And in that movie, you get to see Charlize Theron on screen go through a series of traumatizations. You actually get to watch her being programmed in that movie. If you watch closely enough, you'll see that. One of the things that happens in that film is a bunch of gaslighting. And she, gaslighting is where things are moved around in your house and stuff like that, and you're basically fucked with. And that happens to her in the film, but there are other things that happen to her in the film. She cuts her hair, very, very symbolic, and she has this relationship with the devil in the movie. And she winds up killing herself in the film. It's a very heavy movie. If you haven't watched Devil's Advocate, I highly recommend it. There's a lot in there. There's lots and lots of layers in there. One of the actors in The Devil's Advocate, the various people in Devil's Advocate in that film have very sketchy pasts. And one of the actors, his name is Jeffrey. He was in Beetlejuice. I forget his last name, but he plays a lawyer who gets busted for child porn. Well, in the movie, he plays a lawyer. In real life, he got busted for child porn. He and Pee Wee Herman got busted for child porn at the same time. So he's in the Devil's Advocate. Of course, you have Charlize Theron, and then you've got Keanu Reeves. And then Charlize Theron shows up in the film where she plays Eileen Wuornos, who is the man killer. Right? She got an Oscar for that movie, by the way. It's another, sort of crazed film. And there's another film that she shows up in that is, what is it? It'll come to me. Anyway, she's got this arc of movies where she plays a pretty marginalized character, and a character that is either possessed, as in the case of Eileen Wuornos, or mind controlled, as in the case of Devil's Advocate. Now here she is. She's in Prometheus, and Prometheus. Really, I think the narrative arc of Prometheus is the return of the gods of the planet, the Anunnaki. Or the Archons, or the Archons, or whoever you want to call them. That's my theory about Prometheus. One of the images from Prometheus is one of those almost Olmec-like heads, giant heads. You can see it in the trailer. And so I believe that what they're setting up here is the return of the star gods amongst us, and that might be the disclosure that people are referring to ultimately, not about out there, but them being around us. I was watching, or I started getting into the X-Files a little bit. I have Netflix, so I was looking at various episodes of the X-Files. And I was trying to, find an episode that I would have liked. And on Netflix, they give you descriptions of each episode. And I think I was only up to like episode number 40, and there must have been at least 4 or 5 episodes of the X-Files up until 40. And I think there's like 90 episodes of the X-Files. 4 or 5 episodes that I could find just right off the top of my head that where the narrative or the theme was humans being controlled by some form of either nanotech or synthetic biology or aliens that were microscopic. And this is a theme of Prometheus. And of course, Ridley Scott, has pretty interesting past in terms of filmmaking. Blade Runner, I've talked about Blade Runner, talked about how Blade Runner it's a love tale. It is a romance tale for synthetic biology, synthetic sentience, transhumanism. That's what it is. And the whole thing with Blade Runner is that you don't really know until the end of the film really who is who or what is what. And that really the only human that's left on the planet is the guy that created the androids. Everybody else is an android. Earth is populated by androids. I mean, that's not how the Philip K. Dick book is, but that's how the movie was created. But you've got Ridley Scott doing, he's been a major myth maker in modern cinema, and here we go again with Prometheus, and wrapping our heads around, what it is, what we're dealing with, and what might be coming, which is the advent of the return of the gods. And that is what I believe Prometheus is all about. And Charlize Theron, if you've been following the news, what has Charlize Theron done recently? She has adopted a baby, right? She's adopted either a black baby or mixed race baby. So, and this has become very, very prominent and popular again in Hollywood. These starlets, with their babies. Watch this. I'll make a prediction. You ready? Here's my prediction. Charlize Theron somehow manages to lactate her new baby on a runway on a red carpet for Prometheus. Trust me on this. What's the date? It's June 1st. It's going to be 11:22 in just a couple of seconds. And I'm making a prediction that you're going to see Charlize Theron lactating her child on the red carpet for Prometheus within the next 2 weeks. One man's prediction. Let's find out what sign she is, shall we? Let's see. Let's see what we got. Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron. There she is. Let's find out. Monster was the name of the film with Eileen Wuornos. What is she? So she's Charlize Theron's a Leo. She's a Leo, born August 7th, 1975, South Africa. So she's a Leo. And her father was a Sagittarius, born in November of 1947. All right. Well, I think that's it, kids. I think that's about as much as I can pull out of the cerebral cortex today. And I think I might have set a record for talking on the show by myself, an hour and 22 minutes. Maybe I've talked a little bit longer. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for putting up with me and being patient and hanging out with me. Just some news here. I'm gonna do my best to create a dedicated website to this show because I have the domain name Radio Far, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this either on Kickstarter or one of the other sort of group funding sites. And if I'm gonna do this, I need to get some kind of hardcore essential backing. So I'm gonna put together a package for this on one of those sites so I can upgrade and maybe disentangle from blogtalk, have my own technology, stuff like that, so I can continue to do this and do it in a way that, because ultimately I'd like to do what Red Ice is doing and some of these other shows that have a larger quote-unquote following than yours truly. So that's in the days to come. I've got some downtime coming up. I've got a month pretty much where I'm going to be single and not a single parent, and during that time I'll get a lot of work done. Anyway, that's coming at you. So have a stupendous weekend and get ready for the fireworks. Get ready for the lunar eclipse. Get ready for the Venus transit. We're in for it, Buckle in, buckaroos. It's going to be a pretty interesting time. So with that, you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to open what's possible. I am your humble host and navigator. I'm Robert Phoenix, and I will not see you on Monday because guess what? I'm going to be at my son's baseball game. I moved my life around to do that. But I will be back on Wednesday, and we're going to get into the Venus transit in a very big way. And hopefully I'll have Molly Hall with me on Wednesday. And we get her take on it. Okay, so you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I love you all. This is Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to the Friday FARcast. See you on Wednesday.